Welcome to our third talk in the series on trusting God. Today's focus is from Proverbs 3 verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Now we've already established that to trust in the Lord is first of all based in the character of God. We believe that God is who he says he is. And secondly, it's based in the principles or on the principles and the promises of the Word of God. We believe that God will do what he says he will do. But today we'd like to talk about trusting God with all our heart. What does it mean that we trust God with all our heart? Now, when we think of the heart of man, that's synonymous with our spirit and with our will. Just as our physical heart is the source of our physical life, so our spiritual heart is the source of our spiritual life. So when we trust God with all our heart, we trust him with our spirit, we engage our will. There's an intentionality to it. It's a willing and willful choice to put our trust in God rather than to put our trust in man or our trust in princes, as Proverbs says to us. Now, when it comes to our heart, in Proverbs 4 verse 23, we are encouraged with the following. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Above all else, guard your heart. Another translation says, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it springs the issues of life. Guard your heart or keep your heart. Now, in terms of trusting God, how do we guard our hearts and keep our hearts with all diligence? First of all, we need to guard our hearts against doubting God and doubting the Word of God. Now, the enemy will come to us with many lies. The enemy will lie to us that God is not a good God, that God is not a faithful God, that the words of God and the promises of God aren't trustworthy. Now, we know that's a lie, but we need to guard our heart against those lies. In Genesis 3, during the Garden of Eden, Satan came to Eve and he asked Eve, did God really say that you should not eat of the tree in the center of the garden? He put a doubt in her. Did God really say? And then Eve responds to him and said, God said we can eat of all the fruit in the garden except the tree in the center of the garden. And the enemy says, yes, God knows if you eat of that fruit, you will become like God. Now the issue is Adam and Eve were already of the God kind. They were already like God. But Satan came to put this doubt in their heart. We need to guard our hearts against doubting God and doubting his word. Guard our hearts against the lies of the enemy, that God does not love us, that we're not valuable and special to God, that Jesus didn't really die to forgive us from all our guilt and all our shame. Guard our hearts against doubting God. Secondly, we need to guard our hearts against discontentment that comes up in our lives, becoming discontented in terms of what's happening in our lives, who God's made us to be, in terms of what we have or don't have, and rather be thankful for the things we do have, the salvation that's come our way, the fact that God gave us this incredible gift of Christ. Guard our hearts against any form of discontentment. And then thirdly, we need to guard our hearts against the disappointments that happen in life. Now, life does happen and there will be disappointments. Now, we need to guard our hearts in terms of how we respond to disappointments. The Bible teaches us that if we trust in God, he won't disappoint us. But people disappoint us, circumstances disappoint us, and it's not so much what happens to you in life that's the important thing, but it's our reaction to what happens to us. And there we need to guard our hearts, that we don't react in bitterness or resentment or self-pity, but that we respond in a godly way. Now, when you think of the word reactive or reaction or creative or creation, they're exactly the same letters, they just arranged in a different way. So, if we were to react or we were to be creative, respond in the right way, it takes the same amount of energy. We just need to reorganize our heart. And instead of our heart being focused on ourselves and on our circumstances, we focus on God, align our hearts with God, and we trust God with all our heart. So it's important that we don't submit to the lies of the enemy, that we trust that God will take care of us, just like he says in Matthew 6, that he cares for the lilies of the field and He cares for the birds of the air, we have to trust that God is also going to take care of us. He promises, as we seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, all these other things shall be added unto us. And even the things we don't understand, we trust God even if we don't understand. May God bless you and encourage you as you focus your heart on Him and trust Him in a willing and a willful way. We choose to put our trust in God. He is trustworthy.